first program. The views expressed are those of the guests and not necessarily those of the producer. Today's topic:
India's prosperity despite the state in the Passion for Truth award-winning program.
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. India's economy is growing more than 8% a year, and it's taking place at a time when the US and India are forging new ties. Analysts and scholars say that India is not rising with the help of the state, but rather despite the state. So what has helped the economy? The ingenuity of its people. Well, that ultimately defined the nation's future economy, and most importantly, are high growth and smart reforms enough for the economy to prosper if the quality of governance remains appalling? Let's ask our panelist, Dr. Walter Laundrie, a former State Department official, also a founder of Think Tank for National Self-Determination. He's writing a book on emerging nations without a state, and he has been to India and Pakistan. Retired Ambassador Jonathan Dean, advisor on international security issues. Hali Jalani, political analyst, also chair of the Asian Task Force of the United Nations Association National Capital Area. She has been in Iraq since 9/11 war. And 2003. And Dr. Dennis Warner from Pax Christi, the International Catholic Peace Movement. Dr. Warner has worked in more than 50 countries for a variety of international, governmental, and private organizations. And Dr. Abul Hassan Ansari, a researcher on the historical perspectives of Indian events impacting on Muslims in India and abroad. Starting with you, Walter, what do you make of the finding that the government in India does not govern? It simply runs everything, and the entrepreneurials have withdrawn from the state. How do you read that signal?
Well, there's some truth in it, but also some exaggerations are not quite. I give Nehru a lot of credit for having reorganized India along ethnic lines so that education could be speeded up and people could get educated a little faster. China was a homogeneous country in comparison. They could move faster in education than India could. But India took the step that the Soviet Union had taken and created states along ethnic lines, and that speeded up education in India, and now they're able to catch up. That's part of the reason, but the entrepreneurial spirit helps also, of course.
Ambassador Dean, the middle class in India withdrew from the state long ago, and not even the poor are depending on more on private services than government services. Is that good for the economy?
Well, it's not ideal, but India is making pretty steady progress, and I think will continue to do so. There are problems of corruption, which are found elsewhere, of course, also. Restrictive regulations, that's something that the present Prime Minister has cut back on, and but it's true, people have set up parallel bureaucracies, school systems, hospitals, things of that kind, because the ones provided by the government were inadequate. If one could, by a magic wand, sweep these away, India would doubtless move ahead more rapidly, but it's going to continue to move ahead anyhow, as I see it.
India's people are resilient, Hali. I mean, you think they'll be able to pull themselves up and survive when the state fails to deliver the basic services?
The tragedy of countries like India is, or probably their strength is, that people survive despite the government. The problem is, does one just want to exist, or does one want to live as well? And India is becoming a technological powerhouse. They should not forget the people on the lowest rungs of the ladder.
Where are you on, Dennis?
Well, it's interesting. I think India it has a legacy from the British Empire, and two things were bequeathed to India. One was the English language, the other was bureaucracy. And the Indians have taken both with a vengeance, and their bureaucracy is legendary around the world. But at the same time, the Indians, from their own character, their own nature, seem to be extremely resilient, as some of the other panelists have mentioned. And they are very adaptable, very innovative. You go to India and you find all sorts of small non-governmental organizations, social service groups, health groups, soup kitchen groups. It's incredible the amount of alternative ways the Indian people have to maintain their society. And I think that's the great strength of the society, that they are so adaptive and innovative.
Dr. Anusari?
It's true that despite of the bureaucracy and caste system, etc., Indian people are indeed very resilient. They know how to survive under the most adverse situation. I am an Indian. I know what it means. The people are very resilient, and the government, I have worked in the government hospital, and I have seen the conditions are totally apathetic. People don't get care. You go for chest x-ray, you wait for 2 days for a chest x-ray. On the other hand, in private sector, people are more efficient. They are more creative. They are a sort of genius. And I have seen this, as Dennis has mentioned, soup kitchen, hospitals. I started a hospital for poor people about 4 years ago. We started with 7 beds. Today we have 70 beds. And we are providing the care at a 1/3 cost, very high quality medical care with the highest degree of honesty that lacks in the government institutions.
But what's interesting is that India is not investing in infrastructure anymore. I mean, whatever the roads are built, they get washed away in the monsoon weather. There is it has the perverse effect of discouraging employers from hiring new workers because of the strict labor laws. The question is, how are the high growth and smart reforms enough for the economy to prosper, Dr. Laundrie?
Well, as several people have mentioned, the bureaucracy is pretty horrific in India. I think that India is too big and too diverse to remain as a centralized state. I think India, for its own good, should move toward a decentralized system, give power to the various states of India now that they are organized on linguistic, and become a new union along the lines of the European Union. I think that is the solution. It's either that or a breakup of India in the long run, because I don't think this huge bureaucracy can exist without loosening up.
But can the huge bureaucracy exist, Dennis, if the government fails to provide the basic services to the people? India's economic success has not been shared equally with the cities, with the poor people. Some states have done better than others. But the economy has not created jobs commensurate with the rate of growth.
No, it hasn't, but it has done very well in the sectors that it has looked into, the high-tech, the service sectors, the electronics, information areas. Can the bureaucracy survive if it doesn't change? It probably can't, but we're talking about considerable time in the future. Right now it's a suffocating blanket on top of the creativity of the people. And maybe a suggestion that Walt has brought forward is one approach to it. In effect, it's a federalization of a country as opposed to a centralization of a country.
But that's not going to cure anything, I don't think. I mean, to split up a structure into component parts because the overall structure is not doing its job fully doesn't mean the component parts are going to do any better. I think, I mean, we have the same, there is the same problem in China, even worse than in India as far as I can see. And in general, economic history would appear to indicate that these better off groups pull the others along. I don't like to talk about trickle down and so forth, but that's the history of the development that probably will happen here. As for breaking up India into a confederation, we tell it to Mr. Putin.
Well, I think he should talk to Mr. Putin. Mr. Putin didn't learn, Mr. Putin apparently has not learned what Yeltsin learned, that the place had to break up to move ahead. And Yeltsin, I think, deserves a great deal of credit for taking Russia out of the Soviet Union. It was too hugely bureaucratic. The